Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Photoshop Freelance Bootcamp. My name is Chino, and we'll be going over the interface tour. Let's get started. We're going to open up Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CC, and we'll go over the first interface here. So what you see here is called Recent Files. Now, Photoshop is going to open up this window, and it will give you the recent files that were worked on. As you can see, it'll give you a breakdown of what the file name is and how long ago it was worked on, 20 hours ago. So all of these are previous files all lined up accordingly. Now over here you have two options. You either want to open an old file or you want to create a new one. So for today we're going to create a new one, and I'll show you guys how to do that. This goes the same when we're starting new project files. It's the same thing over and over. Nothing changes. So we're going to start a new file, and we'll name this Interface Tour. So we name it in this area. So here's another window that pops up. Very, very important window when you're starting off your project file. Here at the top are your recent items that you have used. I usually go into the print area, and it'll give you presets, blank presets. Here being the 8.5 by 11, your standard letter size. Then you have your legal size paper. It'll give you a description of actually what it is in each one, just to give you kind of like an easy shortcut to doing what you have to do. Same goes with photos. Okay, you click on the photos, and you have landscape, portrait, 2 by 3 inches, and 300 ppi. That's actually the resolution, and we'll go over that later. Right now, I just want you to get you familiarized with all these windows, which is very, very important because it can be very intimidating at first. So that's all you really need to know about this is how we set up our project, our new project that we're working on. So they have film and video. You can actually create graphics for videos. And right here is already laid out for you, 1920 by 1080. If you're creating something for, like, let's say Instagram, you'll come down here, okay, 720, but you'll put 720 by 720. And you can manipulate all the sizes right here. This is the next step where you want to be able to manipulate the sizes. All right, once again, we're only going to do print, and we'll do your standard letter size. I'll show you how to change sizes. I'm just kind of going over what everything is. And same thing goes here. We got a letter size orientation, and you can click on different settings here. You can do landscape, and you can do portrait. This is the resolution area. Color modes. Color modes are very important down the line. We'll get into that as well. You could do CMYK, and that's for printing. Now, if you're more advanced, obviously you can skip over this, but I want to be able to give you guys everything from the get-go, everything that I've learned, and so you could get a better foundation and you can grow. So now that we understand this and we set up our name here, we're going to create this, okay? And it'll take us to our main palette. Now this right here is our tools palette. Very, very important. We'll be using this tool palette pretty much most of the time. 99% of the time we're using the tools, okay? You could move everything around here. Everything here could be customizable. The way that you move this back into areas is by clicking on this little gray area. And if you drag it over to any of these areas, they start to highlight them in blue. Okay, so you could put them pretty much anywhere you want, depending on what's more comfortable for you. So let's put it right here and show you how it looks, and it'll snap to that area. Okay, And this is our main project file. Okay, you'll see a little tab here. And the tab usually gives you the breakdown of what we just created. So obviously we have an interface tour, okay, and it's an RGB setting, meaning red, green, blue. It's your standardized web graphics, etc. Okay, then you have here your rulers. Okay, in order to activate that, you could press Control R, or you press Apple R, either or. Remember, I can't stress it enough, have those keyboard shortcuts next to you. Okay, very important. I'm going to include that in the pack as well. I want you to get into the habit of saving, into the habit of using shortcuts, cutting and pasting, okay, deselecting and down the line. I want you guys to get really into the habit of that, because what happens is it becomes innate. What's innate? It's like breathing. Okay, and what happens is that you get so used to it, and keyboard shortcuts are in place obviously to save you time. So now that we know that we have our interface here and we have our tab, this is our window. So moving to the top here, okay, we have whatever tool that we click on here, you'll have on the top different ways to manipulate the tool. Okay, as you can see, it keeps changing every time that I click on a tool. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we'll go back to the move tool. That's called the move tool. And whenever you're, unsure of what it is, basically just hover over it and you'll see a small description of what the tool is. Great help. So let's move over here. Starting from the top is my navigator. Very important. Okay, the navigator tool obviously will make you zoom in and zoom out. I'm doing it with a keyboard shortcut, which you need to learn. But when you click on it, you can go in and out. See that? You just drag this and it'll go in and out. The next one is your histogram. Moving down the line, your properties. And here you have some areas of color. And I'll skip to the ones that I've used the most, which is paragraph. Okay, this is to manipulate your text. And you could justify left, justify center, etc. Okay, I'll move down to one of the most important, which is your characters. This manipulates your fonts and your texts. And very important is your history. Now, what is your history? It's basically, if I make a move right here and I type in history, okay, you can see that I recorded that move. And now I'm actually resizing it, and it does that. So it's always recording the moves. You can go back if you want. You can revert. Because what happens is sometimes if you Control Z and you make a mistake, what if you make a bunch of mistakes, or you just want to revert back to a specific moment in time? Your history does that. So now let's go through the drop-down menus. We'll start with File. File, New. So creating a new project, once again, we'll see that interface that came up originally to start a new project, which we went over already. Now we want to open up a new project. So we'll go to the desktop. And I have all my Photoshop assets right here. You can open up whatever project you want. Images. So that's how you import images or project files, which we'll cover on the next module, on how to save files and reopen them and import them. Okay, so we'll close this up. That's what that does. We can browse and bridge. I don't really use that. Open as, don't use that. Open recent. This is pretty cool, because what happens is it's a shortcut to open up something previously that you were working on. Now let's say I had something I was working on here, but I wanted another component from an old project. instead of having to search for it, I could just go to Open Recent. And you can see, go back. You could even clear the list if you want to. I like to keep the list there, so there's sometimes I just go back and I'll open up something previously. Very, very powerful when working. And of course, save. And you'll see the keyboard shortcuts here. That's what that means. So save, Control S, and if you're on a Mac, it'll be Apple S. Pretty sure it's Apple S. Save as, okay. Shift, Control S. This is how it looks with the keyboard shortcut. Shift, Control S. Then you can look for the file in which, the folder in which you want to save it. Okay, we'll go over that next. Exporting. Okay, we don't really use that. We'll go over that in later projects. And that's about it. I mean, I don't really use anything else here. Automate, scripts, all this stuff I really don't use. The main things that I pretty much use, print. You want to print, this is where you print. Print one copy. We'll open up the print palette, and it gets very, very in detail. Here you look for your printer. Okay, my printer's right here. Color management, so forth. And these little lines is basically where it gets cut off. So if you have stuff that kind of goes over in that area, it'll get cut off. It'll actually warn you. So let's reiterate. Open up a new file. Open up a previous file. Open up a recent file. You want to save it, or you want to save as, or you want to print. So that's the most common actions that I take in Photoshop and that I use. I mean, I've been working on Photoshop for many, many years, over 10 years. I don't know, I'm showing my age, but what I'm showing you here is what I use on a daily basis. And most people would think, it's very intimidating, but it's not. You're not going to use all the tools. And that's exactly what I want to show you. I want to show you what to use. You might discover some things differently, but this is the way that I work and how I've been able to be productive. So the next drop-down menu will be Edit. Okay, we're going to go down to the ones that I use the most, which is Free Transform. But remember, keyboard shortcuts, guys. Going to these drop-down menus and finding this takes time. So Free Transform. Write this down, guys. Free Transform. Resizing tool. Okay? That's what's going to help you resize things. Okay? If I wanted to resize this history, I'll click on this, and this is what it does. We can manipulate it, we can rotate it, we can do whatever you want. Remember, history will go right back to where we were. Now, with a keyboard shortcut, now press Control T. You see that? Takes a lot less time than doing this. Edit and looking for it. See, I'm still searching for it because I'm not used to it. I'm used to the keyboard shortcut. Okay. Another one that I use, which I do use for different things as well. It would be more for an image, and we'll kind of break that down. But that's where the area is where you want to distort stuff. You want to kind of like do what it says. You want to distort an image and so forth. I also use this to rotate images perfectly, 180, clockwise, counterclockwise. I use this when I want to flip images horizontally or vertically without having to use the transform tool. Okay, so under Edit, Transform, Free Transform. I'm just using really these two. I don't use anything else in here. Okay, we might cover these down the line, but these are the only two that I cover. Image, big one. So from the top, mode. I only really use these two, and I'll break that down later on in color corrections and stuff like that. We'll go over all resolution and color modes. But for now, I'll just explain to you what RGB is. RGB is basically for web images, anything on the internet, social media, etc. You could print RGB, but it won't come out as rich as you would as CMYK. So keep in mind, guys, RGB, web, internet stuff, CMYK, print. Okay, you want to keep this on 8 bits so you can actually change the mode. If you want to change the mode, do not flatten. Write that down. Every time you change a color mode, do not flatten. Because what happens is all those layers will combine together and you won't be able to change anything. Very, very important. I mean, take that note down. I don't know how many countless mistakes I've made before in doing that. See, every time, do not flatten. Now, let's say let's say I press flatten. What means, just look at this area right here. If I press flatten, these areas combined. And now I can't even manipulate that text. So I've got to go back to my history and make sure I save. Okay, I don't want to save that yet, but make sure I save so I can preserve the editing features of this. Okay, huge, huge. Put a highlight on that because it happens all the time, all the time. So let's go back to RGB. Do not flatten. Never, 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 never flatten. Beautiful. So adjustments. We will be using this later on. This is huge. Adjustments. Adjustments has a bunch of color stuff that we could use. Adjustments is huge. We're going to be using this a lot, especially with manipulating pictures and so forth. So the next area is image size, which is very, very, very important. Why is this important? Well, sometimes when you're designing, well, most of the time, you have to have a certain dimension to conform to. Whether it's an Instagram default picture, whether it's a YouTube banner, a Facebook banner, printing, a t-shirt, mug, you know, a thumbnail, a lower thirds for a news station. It could be so many different things. And this is where it falls in place, the dimensions. You can change the dimensions here in this area. Very, very important. And it'll actually give you the image size here. And sometimes you'll have clients that'll say, well, you know, I need this to be 20 megapixels. So we'll put this down to 200 or 10, and it'll drop. Sorry, 10. You see now it's bytes. It was 24, now it's only 390 kilobytes. Okay, so it actually tells you what it was before, and it's 10 by 10 pixels. Very important. We'll get into that more in detail, but this area is very important. Now, canvas size. This is totally different than image size, meaning that this is actually what the size of the canvas is, which is very important. And as like before, when we want to change something, this is an 8.5 by 11, and we wanted, let's say we wanted to change it to 10 by 11, we could just add that. Okay, and you see that it adds that little bit of extra buffer around there. Okay, you could be on the fly and it'd be like, okay, we need that 10. We just changed it. That's how you do it. So those two are very important. So you have image and canvas. And I want you guys to write that down. So the image, you go to image and canvas, very important. In each one of these, I want you to write notes. So then you can have something to go by quickly in order to navigate easier. Okay, so now the next one that I use a lot is duplicate. And the way that works is basically, let's say we have this business card, let's say history, and then we have John Doe. This is just really quickly so I could just show you guys. Okay, and let's say this is a business card. Let's change this to business card. Right? Business card, John Doe. Let's just say, right? Now, the client wants 3 versions of this because she's got 2 other people for this business card. So that's when I go to duplicate. I will just duplicate this just like this. So this, I would name it John Doe. And as you can see, it will create an extra window with a different tab. And we could change this. This is already John Doe. And let's say Sarah Smith. Once again, we're going to image, duplicate, it'll duplicate another one. It'll give us a duplicate image. We have to name it. Remember, it'll give you an automatic copy of the previous because it's a duplicate. Then we just rename it. We'll put Sarah Smith. Okay? And then we could change that accordingly. Sarah Smith. I'm sorry, I spelled it wrong, but just for argument's sake here. All right? And your tabs, you could toggle through your tabs just as so. So you can have multiple tabs open here, multiple projects. Okay? And you just tab through them. You can have like 20, 50 projects here. So that's how you work with duplicating projects. So let's close this up. We don't want to save that. Press no. And we'll go back to the original. And we go back to image, duplicate, and then that's about it. So it's modes, color modes, which we went over, RGB, CMYK, do not flatten. Adjustments layer would be all coloring stuff, which we'll get into. Image size. Image size is basically, well, here's another thing too, okay? Image size is very important too. If someone sends you an image, it'll give you the information on that image. And I'll show you that later. I'll write a note down and I'll show you that later. Image size. Great. So we'll go over the image size and how to basically, what happens is when you bring in an image and then let's say this image right here, we don't even know what it is. We're just looking at it. And then you go to image size. This is your little guy that's going to investigate what that image is all about. Right on the fly. It'll tell you the image size. It'll tell you the actual width and height, which is very important, and the resolution. Now write this down, guys. A lot of people send stuff to you with low resolution. This is the standard. This is where you want to be at when you're, let's say, investigating an image and someone sends something over and it's for print. And later on down the line, they say, this thing is they sent you a 72 resolution. And we'll go over that once again. But I just want you guys to know that these are your tools that are very important for you. Okay? In investigating things. One click away. Same thing with canvas size. Canvas size will let you add or delete space in the width and height. So let's say, oh, the client says, that 8 by 5 by 11, I want 7 inches height. You could change that. It'll say it's going to cut it off, and boom, you see that? Now we're at the right dimension. And if you want to revert, you revert. Okay, moving forward, layers. Okay, we can go through this now. There's a lot of stuff. Layers, I really don't use pretty much anything here, but we'll go through it. New layer, we could do that. down here. We'll go through the layer stuff. I really don't use anything here. We'll just browse through this. Smart objects, merge down, merge. We'll go through this on the layers module, but layers is obviously controls this area. And you know what? We'll go over the layers area right now, since we're here. So basically, from top to bottom, I don't really use paths or channels. I only really use layers. Okay? What is layers? To put layers into a perspective is, imagine transparent acetate papers, like tracing paper. Imagine you have a book of tracing paper, right? Now let's delete these. Okay? And I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. So let's create a layer. Okay, just to show you off the bat what this palette does. Okay, so we'll go down here and we'll create a layer. See, it says create new layer, and it says layer 1. That's one layer. And for argument's sake, we'll name it red layer. Okay. We'll duplicate this layer by dragging it into the layers again. Okay, see, it says layer copy. Let's do yellow. And we'll go through all this. I just, for argument's sake, just want to kind of give you an idea of what the layers does and how important it is. You could turn off the layers. And we'll color this yellow. Well, as you can see, in this layers palette is kind of these are your sheets of paper. Let's say this is your background. Okay, these are your sheets of paper. So the top layer, which is the yellow, is over the red square. Now if I move this over, it'll reveal the layer that's underneath it. See that? That's what the layers does. Okay, and from top to bottom, I don't really use any of these tools. The only one that I use is this. Okay, and this adds a bunch of effects and stuff like that. There's a drop-down menu for your effects on that layer, whichever layer you're working on. So when you're highlighted on the layer, you could lock the layer. Okay, I use that. You could make the opacity come down. Okay, I pretty much only use those tools. Okay, you could turn the layer on and off, or you could drag the layer, but we'll get more into that. I'm just trying to get you familiarized of what we use here. Okay, you could trash the layer, little trash bucket there. When we want to bring it back, we go to history. Okay, pretty clean cut. Pretty clean cut. You could drag these layers too. Like I said before, you can put it behind. All right. I want you guys to get familiarized with this. You can turn them on and off. Okay, so very important tool here. This interface is by far the most important. Okay. Let's make a couple of layers. I'll just show you how to actually, once they start getting crazy and this bar comes up, so you're able to actually do one of those just to get to the layer that you want. But we'll work on that later. I just want you guys to get familiarized once again with all this. Okay, this interface here. So we went over the tools. Now our next thing, type. Don't use too much with type because I use the actual type tool within the tools palette. So once again, don't really use that. I got a cool tip later on how to match a font. Ever have trouble finding a font? Well, this little puppy right here will help you do that. I'm going to write that down. Match font. Just writing a note for myself so I could remind myself to teach you guys that down the line, which is pretty cool. Because sometimes you get clients or you yourself are trying to find a font. Well, the great thing about Photoshop and the Photoshop cloud is that it'll actually search that font for you. So select. Okay, cool. Now we're at the select drop down. Select all. Well, you guys mostly know what select all is. If you guys don't know what select all is, here it is. Control A. Okay, usually works if you hold down this and you use the Control A option, and you'll see these little, we call them dancing ants, select tool. All right, and to deselect is D. Control D. Okay, so select all, which we just did is deselect it. So get into the habit, Control A, Control D. What is select all? Well, you could be selecting all on text, on images, to just to move stuff over, etc., etc. Okay, I don't really use any else here. I can use the modify, and we'll use that later. I'll show you guys how to use that, but there's nothing else really that I use in that drop down. Now filters. Filters is really, really cool. There's so many different filters here. There's 3D, there's blurring. We'll go through all this stuff as well and all their cool functions. You can do so many cool stuff with this. So that's where that's located. You got your filters. You got liquify, lens correction, vanishing point, camera raw filter. So many cool filters. 3D, we're not going to cover that. But that's just, if you want to mess around with that, that's where the 3D section is. Yes, you can do 3D stuff. You could do 3D renderings of text, and you can actually animate them. Pretty cool. This is a powerful platform. View. Okay, view, don't really use too much here. The zoom in, zoom out, you can do that with the control plus, control subtract, which will be in your keyboard shortcuts as well. Windows. Okay, this is very important here. Okay, because at times you can lose some of these palettes. So in order to get them back, you come here. This is where you come. So as you can see, layers is here. If I unclick it, it'll disappear. And I've freaked out before, and this is really important. Want to get it back? Just click on it. Okay. Oops. Windows layers, sorry. There you go. Okay, you want to collapse this. Little arrow here. Open them up. Collapse. Windows. Same thing. Let's say we want to open up our paragraphs. Paragraphs is right there. This is your overall guide to whatever you need. Okay, you need your brushes. Everything is here. Okay, as far as interface goes, everything is here. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. If you lose something or whatever the case may be, don't be afraid, because everything is here. And remember, you guys could rewind this. You could find the spot that you need in order to pop open the window that you need to manipulate whatever you want. And that's about it, guys. So this is the overall interface tour. And I hope you guys practice. Make sure you guys practice. Open these up, play around with it. Have my video opened on the sideline and go through everything we spoke about. And make sure that you guys are practicing your keyboard shortcuts.